By our potential, leaving however the lies beyond known beyond, place structures of past, anything that humanity established. Our potential, something caught with its limitations, is our conditioning, both personal and collective. Beyond the realm of mind, beyond limitations of humanity conditions, you'll find your consciousness lies which can be called the sacred. Forming one for this be fluid. Born from wipes away the old, brings life to flowering of the living, undivided for the dispersion of mornings drive by with the born tomorrow night. Tomorrow occupy the fright, the freedom, the freedom, the fright, and the freaking ships, the tighten lips that sunk relationships, to pass through the nights of booms and lunatics, and the salt, the booms that was given light, drawers that were pulled. Those unsustainable for the fractious timetables, and find out what's stable. You can find what's recommended for flashlights, and inherit those words first. Balance the composure to expose that for the silent gestures for the guests. Confess that was so sexy. By the language to you, dance that for the caveman, do the billy clubs, and heads to break the beat open for the past that for the pop lock and b-boys, and you can find a transgender for the astral cycle for the ass titus, this to maximus of the tax returns. Sight to seize those to seize to find to seek to soar eyes, and I'll use vows to vow now. Forever to reach that finish line, and that was the borderline. To tan the tins and find the pigmentation dimension, and that was the old newspaper. That was the grass that fed the truth, and that was to read the old colors, the red, white, and the blue for the melancholy. This would be the blow, the jobs, and that was stuck anyway for that you could find a written contraction. Ran out the those of food for taunting skin tones, and that was music for the ears, the stereotypical types, and that was typed down the rights and notes, and this ability to duck downwards, pondering in the lakeside. Statues and find liberated for the radicals, and never rate debate the masters that jack off the days of work, tax the hungry, rich the appetite. Consume all the demons that supply the demands and demonstrate your democracy for the mocking meteors. What meteorites in his articles of the particle to live with time to find the time to be the men for the karma for the ambition to ignite the interest in it. I can find the dry the ammunition for the shoot this shit. I can find to constipate to every asshole in sight. For the I have no eyesight for the headlights and no deer for the insight and the hinder bringer with the Hindu, and I can find the tissue for the come to white the rest of the room to occupy the camp, the kind come on, the grease to red, the Ajabon and arrow birds. Bees of the sparrows with the brawls with the sex of the text of the quick response enough to spouse of joust, dust the holes in your joints and potholes. Used to find those tantalizing, just completely leaking white secretion, riding the secret of seas and seasons, and that was the sea, the seamen, and the inside of the floating of over the seas to shores of hordes of forward, defining what's tamed to tantalize the inside to occupy the tents. Tension being more gratifying, because I am part of all that I meant. And I don't want to keep running away from what I ever wanted to face. So this will be much what you hate for the changing, and whether you're going to allow that divine to be yours or not, the pride for it to come in from where you're going, for the beating over the growing, the constipated death, reminding for the replicating your head for the ratio. I can find it rather than I can find a technique. Good enough for the prototype of the protocol. Saw the scene and all the things you learned. Rolling times and times and all was aligned. And that's the parallel for the fortune to tell the forward tunes, and you play that reverb per action done again, repeating your course cordially. Coordinating. Exclusive. Blind dates. Fading makes sight to seer near, shared the free steps, rest from forest barely, bareback from rarely, shared to see the shortest shortcomings, and coming shorter coming to the sorters of the border for the supportive portions of impotence with the competence to find a sentence and to be consenting. Compelling enough to spare to spread about the clout. Clawed to become blawed, the blind outside perspectives of spectating your reality. Relocated to found and deposited, despised after disparities, impaired after the intuitive trinity of the divine society, and shredded after the trends of the pretending. For the aggravated, for the occult division, the aggro that came short enough of growing to knowing the height of no wings. Get you faking factors now with a vacate. Also vacant. Renewable enough for the renovations and sitting ovations and standing for what? No reason to sit there for the theory of symmetry, indicating your denial and denoted for the notice of circumstances that was the stance of time to find a chance and lean on the high school of thought. Conviction. Convoluting everything, then lowering the premises and the premier itself, premature enough for the premeditate your mediators. Commentate your states to waste of this sense of smell before the penetrating your impatience and patterns and turn to that projected project. I can find gentrification of project. Sobrieties in libraries and checking their project. That for the dictated enough for the vagina eyes, this will be the penetrative provocative indicate yourself for the chance to find the chance today for the creating a child will have that for the life of the creative force and it's a native for the choosing and nauseating your deviant experience. Peer the boardwalk for the life gains. Board games and I was taking board to play off the board. Currencies, pesos for that for the lure I could find it. Paying attention to 10 to 10 to 10 10 to that for the tremendous and tremors and trend and then finding the settlers to contain that for the 10 to 100 heartbeat. Air drums. Ceremonial occasions and Otaho, I could find a cure that for the occultism, this the Octavius, and no matter what you have to bend for the faith of this will have given a promise of peace. Departure of his own power and spirit of the world. Christ Jesus, the first time the world will want to see the time for the day for we had to be rich enough for the life that was broken up through the faith. Given the promise of that jumpstart to new life and understanding that over the underwhelming, the underwriting and riddance, and that was the long day of history that reached out for the new generation of children who could find the first to come back for the last man standing up for the new generate elections and democracy, and elites and not for the wickedness and the rendering how to find a reality for the hard time. Get into this from the past, the pastures, and preaching full of regulations and regarding the regulars, residing the reason you can find it backsliding and sliding back to the line to the cycle of phases and labyrinth, surpasses serpents and repeated repentance. Rather in love for the passion for the Lord, for the divine spirit to be able to make the ways of season invisible for the advice and adversity, to reveal itself for the self-perpetuated, for the appetite to fast forward, and the former bites to suck the flavor to favor, taste the bitterness of provoking your excuse and exorcism for this to be the exercise, and expedited for the expediency, for the divine, deviant, developing countries and coincide. And those are countless times to find a second chance, and this is made of shades and charities and shades over the children of the future to present your states instead, he said. They're still stimulated, but there's worth the simple compliant. Complicated enough to be compelled to pull the premises and the premonition for the notions that normally wouldn't comply. I can find a comment and just commit the comments. Coming back to what is messengers and besides the media rights are wrong. The righteous and right for the present their presentation they're finding no notions and nations and disaccountless countries and found the counties and counters saying they couldn't find contractions to contracts. Contrary to continue to concern for the condition and consequences for the conversion. Of course, what conversion, this convoluted for the congress and confrontations considered enough constant, constipated consequently for the conspiring and consolidated for the council, confusing enough for confining. Confidential information companies can compensate consumers to continue to connecting your content, condition for the considered. You can either contort it, conversion, contemplate your template, given the grief and grace and gravitation of grave sites and vision to remember your vices that left the soul, the cool, the karma, the caring, character of enough for the charity, rarity, or change. Chased after the chastising category for the allegations and blame, and allegiance enough to alleviate your deprivations and privilege to primarily find that premature matters to be a good thing. They don't have to be that for the one that has to be for the new to be to something enough for the summer rising, the summer with the rising, the reason you but they resonate for the real life and rather that reaction. Intimidate, or intimate enough for the occasional dating site that was saw a heartbreak. Coming down the ground for the coupled enough for the paid the cooperation. Between the course of the competition, the singing the petition, the being petted enough for the petrified patron to pay rules. Well, I can find the payback. You can find the thrills. It was chill being that for even finding killing him against the rivals and having to ride yet to the arena for they did with their areolas and suck that with defeating the perversion that comfort your players and down to touch that body. You better have somebody to touch you with the spirit. Release that for what you can feel. Don't be a paraplegic. But we're in search for the better place for this inside of our heart, for this is the kingdom when you can find a death to do us the part or never define it will never be a perish. Robert Parrish lives to rob you from the desolate deep that come into the middle of the night. For this is smarter enough you can sleep in enough of the painting, the parts and find in particular enough of to expand yourself with the stones and stoners and authenticity for the grind, but the distasteful grammar for enough of to be the tongue displayed. Displacing, replacing, perfecting instead of perfection, objective, but enough of the course and responding, but enough of the reacting. You're straight to your timelines with engagement and habits and habitual thinking around about repetition, enough of the ability to bound if it's a lie, but enough the truth to find the frame. Memory infused to come be infused and fusing with the fun, spontaneous and fun, of reluctance and the sentiments for the nose to brain. Braille enough for the compromise, adventure, the center of the thoughts, and these events and course of finding upon the play, predominated, dominated for the families, and you can find engagement and habits.